In my introduction to my air-bearing surface grinder, someone recently asked about the method I use to dress the grinding wheel on the grinder. Normally, in a commercial surface grinder, the bed is moving and the wheel and motor are fixed, but I've reversed that. So rather than just fixing the diamond, which is mounted right here in this block, which is then attached to the larger block, rather than moving that diamond on a movable table across the wheel, I have to move this block on the fixed table under the wheel. That may make more sense when we see what's going on a little later in this video. But to move that block in a vertical fashion, I made a simple little lever guide here that clamps onto the support block. Normally the straight edge would be here, but it's not right now. So this guide clamps to this block, and I square that guide up to the table with a simple square so that it is correctly oriented to the table and will allow a straight traverse across the stone. If the thing were angled like this, say, what would happen is the stone would be dressed with an angled face, like so or like so. You want to traverse straight across. The stone is mounted in a fairly, I guess I'll say, massive block, because I wanted to be sure that it didn't tend to vibrate around, that it was nice and stable. So I use this piece of, I think that's maybe 1-inch steel plate, and it has four feet that you can see, and those are adjustable set screws, basically, and I adjust them until there is no rock of this block. All 4 points are in the same plane. And then I bring it over to the guide, making sure that I'm just slightly past center here on the wheel, and let the wheel down until it just starts to contact the diamond. And that's done via a screw located back here, and I have this hex key in it, and I can spin the wheel with one hand and lower the screw with the other. That's a little hard to do holding the phone here with the camera, so maybe I'll set the camera down and just demonstrate that step. Okay, to demonstrate lowering the wheel down until it contacts, you can hear that there's no contact, there's no grating at the present time, because there's just a little clearance between the top of the diamond and the bottom of the stone. But as I turn the screw over here by moving the hex key, the stone is lowering, and you can just hear it starting to make contact now. So there, it's just contacting the wheel. So I'm getting close to a position where I can dress the wheel. And when I do that dress, I'll lower the wheel a little bit, and then we'll just traverse straight across like so with the wheel turning. And that will knock off some of the grit off the surface of that wheel, exposing new, fresh, sharp grit. And that makes for a wheel that will cut smoothly and coolly, both. The stone is driven by a 3-phase motor, which you don't see very well. It's actually hidden behind this ballast box. But this is the control for the 3-phase motor. This control connected to a variable frequency drive, of course. So let's go ahead and spin the wheel up a little bit. The grinding that you heard at the beginning of motion is actually a ball balancing system that I haven't talked about, and I won't talk about very much right now, but I may in a later video. But it helps balance this whole system. I think I mentioned in a reply or two earlier that I had done my own balancing, dynamic balancing of this wheel, and I'll link sometime to a thread where that was talked about. But for right now, we're going to just concentrate on dressing the wheel. So let's see what happens right now as I move the diamond across the stone. And what you could hear there was partial contact of the wheel. That's because I had done quite a bit of grinding with that wheel previously and marched systematically across the work as you're supposed to do, and that causes the leading edge, if you will, of the wheel to break down, whereas the trailing edge has less cutting to do, and so it tends to not wear away as much. What we're trying to do here today is put a fresh face on that is nice and flat, and then of course with use it'll do the exact same thing. So the diamond's now on the inside of the wheel. I'm going to lower the wheel a little bit more, probably a little less than a thou, and we'll come across the wheel again, like so. I took off a little bit more. I'm going to come across one more time. Depending on how fast I traverse, that determines how, as they say, open the wheel is. In other words, if you want a nice coarse dress on the wheel with widely spaced grooves formed by the diamond, if you will, that makes for a cool cutting but somewhat rough surface cutting stone. Actually, for what I'm doing, that's just what I want, because I'm not out to get a mirror finish. There's no need of doing that. I just want a nice, accurate, flat surface prepped for scraping, which is going to obliterate a nice smooth surface or a slightly rough surface with the very first pass of scraping. So I'm going to go for a fairly open dress here, which means I'm going to traverse pretty rapidly. That should result in a decent face that should cut pretty well for me. I brought you down to an angle here in line with the wheel because although I said that should be a good face and everything should be fine, it's sometimes kind of nice to check. And so what I'm doing here is using a carpenter's pencil and putting some carbon on the face of the wheel, and then I'm going to go ahead and make a dressing cut across there and see if I cleaned up the entire surface of the wheel or not. I wish I could do that right here live, but I think I'm going to have to set the phone. I think it's possible to see that in fact only about 3/4 of the face cleaned up, because beginning about right here it looks like there's still carbon. This face looks clean. So let's go ahead. I'll lower the wheel a couple of thou again and make another cut, and then we'll come back and see what we have. Okay, I've set the camera up in a kind of shaky way, but I think will allow us to watch the diamond go across the wheel here. So let's see what we get now. I have blackened the face with the carpenter's pencil again. Hopefully we'll see it clean up practically all the way across. Lower down a little bit more and come back. I'm pretty convinced that we've got that wheel nice and dressed now, and I'll be anxious to see how it goes on the next grinding episode. I won't be able to do that right now, but it won't be too awful long, maybe a day or two.